Okay, I believe we're back. So, today I'm going to be talking about the Gutenberg printing press. Now, this was a device created by Johannes Gutenberg, a German metallurgist. That's probably not the right term. He was a specialist in he had some metalworking background with gold. So I guess that's a goldsmith, right? I'm not sure on my um, medieval uh, employment. Well, I guess there's still goldsmiths today, but it's a little less prominent. So this printing press, I'm just gonna get my thesis off right at the start. This device is one of the most important devices in all of human history. It had a very significant impact on the uh, on the timeline of human history, and the significance of it is the fact that it really wasn't anything new. It was just a sort of reworking of the current day's technology. So I'll start by just kind of giving a description of what this device looked like, and then we'll be able to use that for reference. So this is this printing press, and actually I put a link to an article in the description. But if you search around, you'll be able to see pictures of the printing press, so you'll get a better visual from those than what I'm about to draw. But essentially, there's this sort of caged design, and so pardon my squiggly three dimensions, and then it's a little bit bigger on the base, and so this was this kind of. And so we have this whole contraption that is a big rectangular. It almost looked like a kind of like a what we would now have as like a weird looking fountain, but obviously it wasn't water powered or anything. It was all man powered. Um, so I'll give a little history while I'm drawing this. Um, in terms of printing, the Chinese actually had the Europeans beat by a long time. The Chinese, with the invention of silk paper um, and various inks, they were able to have a written language much earlier than most people were, other than like stone carvings. Um, but around 600 AD, they actually had a printing system. It was a wooden block printing mechanism. They would carve out a wooden block, and they could, with that block, they could print several pages by loading it up with ink, sort of like a big stamp, and they were able to uh, just press it onto the paper. And this method was more efficient than writing it out every single time, and it was also more accurate, because if you are pressing the same piece of wood onto the paper every time, then you're creating the same image and the same text. But what the disadvantage of this was is obviously carving out an entire block of wood with the characters um, is a difficult process. It requires some skilled artisans, and it also requires a lot of time. And so, if there were to be a typo, then it would be a lot of time lost, because you have to go back and create an entire new block of wood. So this here is a printing press, and so there are some key features that are improvements that are better than the Chinese tactic. Um, but one key thing that dropped the method for the Chinese to a lower level than the Europeans was because the Chinese language actually had over 10,000 different symbols. And if you think about the what the Europeans were working with, even if it were a Greek language or something like that, the alphabet is relatively small. The current English alphabet is only 26 letters, so this compared to over 10,000 is much more manageable. So pressing techniques were useful in the European countries, but um, something significant changed with the creation of the Gutenberg press. And so Gutenberg, I have it in the title, but it should be Gutenberg. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um, so this man Gutenberg, he was like I said, he was a goldsmith. So he had some background in metalwork and the creation of alloys. And so he had three big uh, advancements and three big changes that were different from the other metal presses of the time. There were people with similar designs, and this actually caused a lot of problems. He was sued several times for infringement, or I guess it wouldn't be copyright infringement. It'd be patent. So people had patents on designs that were very similar, and it caused problems. So Gutenberg actually did not die a wealthy man. He was sued pretty much down to the bone and ended up having to give up a lot. But so these three different advancements were um, they were the alloy that was used. It was the interchangeable block system, so int block, and he also created a new ink. So um, everything else is just borrowed from uh, other ideas. This actual device, the original one, was a press. It's a screw press. So what happens is this part right here, when you pull the lever, this rotates. It screws down and it presses down. And so what this screw press was originally used for was squeezing grapes for wine. This wasn't anything that had to do with printing or anything. It was squeezing grapes for wine. So Gutenberg was able to take this design, and because it's very convenient, there's a one lever. You put whatever you need under there. You press it down, and it does all the work for you with the power of screwing. Which, if you know, in terms of simple machines, a screw is very powerful in the lateral direction because it takes that rotating direction and forces it downwards down the shaft of the screw. So what Gutenberg did was he well, first let's explain the other ones. The first topic here. So this alloy, like I said, Gutenberg had some metalworking background. Um, so this meant that he knew how to melt down metals, create new alloys, and to cast these metals into molds so that he could create many different versions of a specific piece. So this alloy was, I believe they were saying it was mainly tin and a couple other maybe lighter metals, but the I don't know the specifics of what went into the alloy, but the specs on it are the important part. So this alloy was very easy to melt, but at the same time, it was relatively strong. And so, what is the significance of this? Well, if something is easy to melt and you need to make new pieces every once in a while, it's very easy to melt down the metal, pour it into a mold, and create a new piece. Maybe if you needed a letter for a specific reason. Um, and it's also strong once it has hardened. And this is nice because compared to wooden presses, which would eventually dull and you get a more blotched picture, a strong metal will give off the same imprint every single time for a very long time. And if the metal were to dull, you can simply melt it down, recast it, and you have a completely new sharp image. Now, this played right in with this interchangeable block pattern. So Gutenberg had this design where there was actually a square tray, and so this was the shape of a paper. It might not have been square, probably like a rectangle or something paper shaped. So what he could do is he could take his letters here and he could just put them in and put them in side by side, and you can put all of the letters in the order that they need to be on the paper. So this is big because you what happens is, like with the wooden press or with any carved metal presses, if you make a mistake, you have to make a whole new block. You have to make a whole new thing that you're going to press down on the paper, because there's no way you can go in and fix that unless it happened to be a relatively simple fix. Maybe it was a character that had something extra compared to another character, and you could take that off. I don't know, like a G, and you could turn it into a C. But in terms of artisans, this isn't something that's going to look pretty. It's going to look messy. So it's not something, if you are trying to make a quality product, you want to do, because it's cutting corners. And in engineering, cutting corners isn't usually what we want, because we don't want bridges to fall down. We don't want cars to break down. We want the device to do what we expect it to do. So with this interchangeable block pattern, as opposed to having an entire block with every single letter and every single word that you need on the page, this tray would just be lined with the individual blocks for the letters, and then once it is done, it would be attached here to the press so that the paper can be pressed on, and the letters would be imprinted on the paper with the ink. So I'll get into the ink in a second, but I will mention that this task of putting the individual pieces in the tray wasn't necessarily an easy task. Obviously, if you've ever tried to organize something so compact into a tray, it's not too simple. It's very time consuming, very tedious. But in comparison to sitting there and carving a piece of metal or a piece of wood, this is something that could be done in perhaps a day, maybe in like 6 hours or something like that. And so the turnaround on making a change to the device is extremely fast in terms of the day and age that it was created for. So let's get into the ink. This ink was significant because it was oil-based. Now, most of the inks of the day were water-based, and so the significance of an oil-based ink was that it was a better transfer from metal to paper. The water-based ink would perhaps get stuck a little bit more to the metal. Water is relatively cohesive and adhesive, so it likes to stick to things and it likes to stick to itself. But this oil-based ink was better at transferring from the metal to the paper, so it was an efficient process. It would be maybe one press and the paper would be pristine and sharp with its edges and everything. So these are the three major points that line up what was different about Johannes Gutenberg's printing press. But what was significant about it? Well, I've given off all these examples of how it's convenient, it's faster, and so in this day and age, books were relatively expensive. In fact, even the original books created by Gutenberg himself, which I believe the first major title he actually printed was a Bible, um, these first pressed books were extremely expensive. It would cost, I believe, in one of the articles I read, they said that it would have taken an entire year's salary for the normal worker to have bought one of these books. Um, to have bought one of these books. So, um, so even when the press was debuted, this book price was extremely high, and this was because of supply and demand. The printing process was extremely strenuous. It was extremely slow. So creating a book was a big ordeal. And so obviously, if you can't create as many books, people have to pay more to get the books. This is a common economic topic. So what happened was, in terms of speed, the Gutenberg press was a significant step faster than any other pressing technique of the time. And so it created this completely new supply. And so it didn't, Gutenberg didn't do this on his own. Many people took up the idea because this was a relatively simple design. They took a wine screw press, which already existed, and it was modified to be this new interchangeable block printing press. Now, whether or not people actually went out and bought a wine press, I couldn't tell you. They might have just seen the design and designed it themselves. But this idea was relatively simple to design. So many people in other countries other than Germany started printing things of their own with this new Gutenberg design. And so the efficiency rate of producing books extremely jumped. It put more books out on the market. So what does this do? It increases the supply, which lowers the demand. More people are able to get books, so they won't pay as much for the books. Um, so then, with the book price lowering, this had many repercussions. And so, like I said in the beginning of the stream, this was right at the beginning of the Renaissance. So this is a time when scientific research was on a very high point in society. So this new, cheaper, faster printing method was able to get this information that was being created by the scientific community out to other people who are researching, and perhaps other people who wouldn't necessarily have gained this information. It's kind of like what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to take a large amount of information and provide it easily for the masses. But that aside, so the researchers were able to get their information out. Even Christopher Columbus's documents about the New World were able to be printed quickly and distributed to the masses so that they were able to learn about the New World. So this alone has a large impact on the advancement of the scientific community, the events leading up to the race for the New World and for colonization. Information was being transferred at an all-time high. But also, there was another repercussion, because, like I said, the first book that was produced by the Gutenberg Press was a Bible, and it wasn't the only Bible that was produced by the Gutenberg Press. Many Bibles were now created, which completely changed the game for religion, because now people who would normally be the everyday churchgoers could have a Bible of their own in their home. With literacy growing due to the larger supply of books, people could now read the Bible for themselves. And so before the invention of this press, people would have to go to church. Obviously, in that time, people still went to church after the press, but people went to church and they received the message of God from a priest and from a member of the clergy. And so this was a very specific Catholic interpretation of the Bible, because these were the people you were getting the information from. But with this new availability of the Bible for the people, for the common people, they could now read it and begin to interpret it for themselves. Now, this didn't happen right away, but was Martin Luther, not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther. He went up and he nailed the 95 Theses on the door of a German church. Well, he sparked the Protestant Reformation. But if you really think about it, the ability to have an unbiased view, or perhaps at least a interpretable view of the religious documents in the Bible, would have had a very significant impact on the advancements towards the Protestant Reformation. So I believe one of the articles, it might not be the ASME article, but it possibly is. One of the articles I read was saying that even Martin Luther himself had several copies of his theses made so that he could hand them out to people after he had nailed them to the door. Because obviously not everyone is going to go see this spectacle on the German church. So it's just amazing when you dig into the detail. This simple machine, which in its own wasn't necessarily a new creation, it was merely a new spin on an old creation, on several other old creations. It was able to create such a giant ripple in society and in the human race to spark an entire new era of humanity and science and religion and colonization. So I hope that I have done this topic justice. And if you have any questions on that, I will be open to answering them in the chat. But this is, I believe I've gotten all I want to out on this topic. So I'm going to play a quick ad, and then I'm going to move into my normal segment where I draw a random picture on Paint. So I will play a quick ad and get right into that.